if you're tired of the College Football Playoff Committee, or if you want to call it the Big Ten SEC Playoff Committee, then maybe my good friend Bomber here has a solution, or at least an idea that we can talk about tonight, and a way the Big 12 can secure themselves a safer position when it comes to the College Football Playoff. What is up, and welcome into this live edition of Couz's Corner. Thank you all for joining the show tonight. Shout out to my friend Bomber here from the College Football Mafia Network. You can find him on X at B12 Mafia. What is up, Bomber?
Not much. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this since you asked me a couple days ago. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun, and maybe we'll learn something.
Yeah, maybe that, or we'll get dumber. Either way, we're gonna have fun either way, right?
I'm all for it.
Real quick before we get into the show, I do have to do some housekeeping here, and so we will be back in about 35 seconds. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right. Thank you for sticking around with us, and thank you for being patient. We are back. Thank you to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner for helping me keep the lights on. And the first topic we're going to talk about tonight is something that Bomber, I know, has been preaching from the mountaintops on X, and I'm sure he's done it on his show as well multiple times, and that is the Big 12 and a playoff, doing their own conference playoff at the end of the season. And Bomber, can you kind of just lay that out? I don't know all the details of what of where you're going with this. So can you just kind of lay it out for everybody?
Absolutely, I can. And question me if I'm not clear, okay?
Yeah.
First of
absolutely.
all, I need to say this out loud. The first person I heard this idea from was from Immaculate View. You can find him on Twitter. But that breakdown didn't have detail, at least that I could remember. So I give him credit for the idea. Maybe his breakdown was the same as mine is now, but regardless, in my opinion, the Big 12 is out one thing, and that's they cannot get enough good games in front of this playoff committee. Recency bias, get over that, and put their best team's foot forward to get into the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
If we assume nothing changes, they don't add any more teams, and they don't add more objective analysis to pick those teams. If everything is to stay the same next year, I think the Big 12 should do a semifinal round and then a final round of the best 4 teams in the conference. You're still going to have tiebreakers. That's never going to go away. This conference is really deep, and everybody's good for the most part. Yeah. And so that 4 teams, 8 teams, doesn't matter what it is, but the semifinal round. And then what they would do with the other, that would be 12 teams that didn't qualify for those semifinal games. Those guys would be put back into a poll, and then they play each other. Okay. And I don't know if you do it as simple as the highest and the highest or whatever. Those teams are reshuffled, and the last week of the season, they actually play the semifinal games and then these rematched sort of flex schedule games like they do in the NFL with flex time. And you make it very open. It's transparent. Everybody knows who's playing who and why. But what it does for the College Football Playoff Committee is it says, okay, we didn't have a way to separate. We're going to talk about the top 4 teams: BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State, right? Mm-hmm. Well, BYU and Iowa State never played head-to-head.
Right.
And they also didn't play Colorado. So you add those matchups into this 4-team semifinal, and then you get a true final which would be the next week, like this week is today. And coming out of that championship week, you would have not only the team that won the whole thing, but 3 other teams that went through this semifinal round. And it gives you an opportunity to promote them more going into the playoff. Because right now, the Big 12 is playing 9 league games, and it's killing them. It's absolutely killing them because that 9th game is an auto win if you do a FCS school, for instance, like Mercer played in the second to last week, played Alabama or Georgia. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's a free game, but it's also a free win. And what we've seen is Boise State, not knocking Boise State as a school, but the conference they're in is much less competitive than the Big 12 is. So would it be easier to go 11 and 1 in a conference that, competition isn't that great?
Right.
Or is it better to have 4 teams or 8 teams in a Big 12 now that you can say, see, we went head to head. They were in the top 25. These are the teams we want to promote to go to the playoff.
Okay. I love it. I like the idea. I like on the surface. I actually did a video on this about 2 years ago, believe it or not, talking about something very, very similar. I don't want to. It's one of my worst videos I've ever done as far as quality goes. I had mic issues. There was a lot of issues. So I'm not super proud of that. But I did talk about something similar.
Okay.
And at that time, I thought it was a great idea. But now I have concerns about it, and here's why. If you've got, let's just say, and you maybe you can clarify this for me. If you have Iowa State and Colorado playing each other, and you have BYU, Arizona State theoretically, right?
Okay.
You're going to have 2 winners out of that. Well, let's say Iowa State and Arizona State come out of that just like they are now.
Right.
And doesn't at least you have an extra game tied in there, not an extra game, but you have an extra game against an opponent you know is going to be a tough opponent, right?
But
it kind of takes the unbalanced scheduling piece out of the equation, so to speak, right?
Not necessarily, because what you're trying to do is add more games against top opponents, right?
Okay.
What's the one thing that Boise State is selling? A 3-point loss, a 3-point loss to Oregon, and it's been called a good loss at the college football playoff talks,
right?
Which is ridiculous. Who ever heard of a good loss?
Oh, they changed their criteria depending on who the team is they're talking about.
I agree with you.
It's the biggest sham.
Yeah, the strength of schedule used to be the thing everybody leaned on. Now it's strength of record. It's all these other dynamics that are all subjective. Couz.
Correct.
They're all
exactly.
subjective.
It's a
we
sham.
need more objectivity. Sorry, I need to back up too because I misspoke. 7 league games. The 8th would be the semifinal round. So you still have non-conference games against a Mercer, against Appalachian State, again, you know what I'm saying? So it's 7 league games. That last week, which would be rivalry week now, that is one that it's the remix 12 teams plus the semifinal games. And then you have those head-to-heads, and you can say, yeah, I might have lost, but look who I lost to. The team that had 1 loss that we would promote to be the next one added to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the idea is perfect, but if you go to 7 plus 1 for league games, you do 4 out of conference, but those out of conference are maybe 2 G5, an FCS, and then a Power 5 opponent. And if I was Brett Yormark, I would tell my schools to schedule like Purdue.
So you're adding an extra data point.
Yes, that's the whole point. That's exactly
okay.
Right.
All right. Now I'm okay. So you're playing 4 non-cons plus the 9 league games.
Yes.
If you count
it's not 9, it's 8. It's 7 and then the semifinal round. So
but the championship would be 9.
Yeah, but the championship's already 9 now.
Right. Now everybody's
yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the championship now is actually the 10th game.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And make sure the non-con is tough enough to where you get that extra.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could still schedule head-to-heads with like BYU playing against a Miami or a Clemson. That would be great if we could do those, because then both the ACC and the Big 12 benefit.
Yeah. Here's the only, and I like the idea, and I do think things like this need to be talked about, and hopefully Brett Yormark is listening to you.
Oh, I sure hope so.
Maybe, hey, Brett, if you're listening, come on one of our shows and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely, yes.
But anyway, my concern is you're opening yourself up to get your top teams. You're opening yourself. We're seeing right now the way it's set up. The Big 12 is going to be lucky to ever get more than one team in.
Right now, that's true. Yes.
And I fear that if you do this playoff scenario, if you're adding the extra non-con game, that opens you up for another loss, right?
Yeah.
Against a Power 4 team.
Yep.
If you're playing, you've got your 4 best teams playing each other at the end of the year. So you're opening up for another loss there for each of those, right?
Well, it's
to
not.
Me,
it's like a strategic game, though. It's one that's high profile enough that when people watch it, there's no loser. Both teams play against another strong opponent, and they can say, "I lost to a top 25," or "I won a top 25."
And that's a good idea. But the problem is the Big 12 is never going to get the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably not. This isn't going to change.
That losing team is going to be out regardless.
Maybe,
unless they're undefeated or something. I mean, that would be different.
I mean, that's absolutely like. Look, let's talk right now. If BYU hadn't thrown away the game against Kansas, they'd be 11-1. Arizona State beat them, but if there was a tiebreaker that says BYU 11-1 doesn't get into the CFP because of the championship game, and 11-1 BYU, I think would be in the top 12 right now because the SEC ate itself alive this year.
Yeah.
So while Alabama is always going to get the benefit of the doubt on a 2-loss team, I think it would be extremely hard to put them in over a 1-loss team. That's just the way I look at it. My perception of what they've done.
But like I said, but the way the Big 12 is constructed, and there's so much parity in the Big 12.
Yes,
there's going to be very, very few years where there's only a 1-loss champion.
Yeah, you're probably right. But what's the alternative? The alternative is that 8th game when you're playing with your just regular schedule. BYU beating Houston did not help BYU, right? But if BYU had beaten Colorado, that would be looked at differently. So is it a risk? Absolutely is it a risk. But they're not going to change the CFP for the Big 12. Just for the Big 12, they're not going to make changes. So what can you do that's in your control?
Yeah.
That could possibly raise the profile of the teams that are playing.
Yeah. And it would bring now, and let's talk the revenue part of it. It would also bring more revenue to the league because I think the TV partners.
I didn't get to that yet, but that's right.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, but think about it. It's a more valuable TV slot, right? Yep. And you can actually use different advertisers. Not the local, Chevy dealer. Maybe you're getting another Geico ad. Maybe you're getting another McDonald's national ads, which bring a lot more revenue to the conference and the schools.
Yeah.
Really quick, Bob Swanger, can you get to his comment? It was near one of the newest ones. It says, let me scroll up here. Yes, that one right there. So, Bob, it's good to see you, by the way. Bob and I are friends on Twitter and on my show as well. Can you do it with your current TV contract? So, when Brett Yormark went out today, and I don't know if you're going to play those quotes at all, Couz, but Brett Yormark basically laid into the CFP like he didn't know him anything. And in that, he's like, you're disincentivizing us to play these out-of-conference games when you're not going to give us a strength of a schedule bonus, right? So he's talking about it like it's something that really bothered him. And using his words, and I'm paraphrasing, I encourage everybody to go and watch the interview he did. I think there is movement in there that they can turn around and do something with that 9th game. Now, I'm not sure what that is, but his actions, everything he said and everything he's done tells me that he sees there's a problem. He's going to do everything he can to solve it for the schools.
Yeah. Okay. I actually got that queued up.
Do you play it? That's a wonderful.
It might not be queued up in the exact spot, but we'll get it there. Nonetheless, real quick, I do want to recognize everybody that's in the chat room. Thank you for stopping. Timothy Green, Hugh Glass, UC Fez, Chief Fan. We got College Football Mafia in the house. It's not okay golf. And he's talking. He wants the college football to do something similar to what Live Golf is doing,
Which is
like a summer league, so to speak, like a summer tournament.
for
Bracket is
football.
decided by fan money and who wants to play each
Oh,
other bad
okay,
enough.
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure.
don't know.
I don't think I'm familiar enough with that whole thing to
Yeah,
respond, to be honest. Gary Whelan in the house, Clint Moses, Chris Mitchell, Evan the reporter, Leo Ashmore in the house, Stanley Metz Jr., a very, very loyal listener here on the channel. Actually knows Stanley as well. He's a local guy here. Spitfire the Dragon. There's Bob. There's Timothy Green. Who else we got? CFB Plus in the house. He says the
it's been
committee
a
is a
minute.
joke.
Yeah.
Absolutely. See who we got. Anybody else? John Christophic, thank you for dropping in, and David Floyd. He says bring back the BCS. Big 12 needs to go to an 8-game conference schedule.
So, David, let's address that one really quick. So,
Yep.
the BCS was a calculation that they went in and they said, let's assign every stat a number. And that number would then be propagated into this calculation from several, like I think there was 3 or 4 major computer polls that they used, but they also used the coaches poll and they also used the regular AP poll. And when you bring the polls in, the Big 12 is always going to be behind in the polls because during the summer, when the off season, right, the recruiting rankings and your returning people always skew who that first top 25 is. So, in my opinion, there shouldn't be one poll until they play 1, 2, 3, or 4 games.
Yeah.
I'm talking no preseason polls, nothing that's actually used until you've played 3 or 4 games. And then after that point, that's when you rack everybody.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, you've got a lot of pretenders out of the way.
Yeah. They got to do something, right?
Yes.
Something has to change. But I'm agreed. Yeah, these preseason polls are now that especially now, they've always been kind of a waste of time. But it was something for the media to talk about, and they were fun, right?
Well, and fans get energized and
yeah.
everything else. That's
But
right.
now with these big conferences now, man, that they're never accurate anymore. I mean,
right.
I'm as accurate as they are. I mean, they're terrible. And I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody. It's just you can't predict it now. It's just so crazy with 16 teams and unbalanced scheduling.
Yes.
How can you predict it? You know, because the unbalanced scheduling is, to me, that's a problem.
Yeah, they need to go to like pods or something. I agree with you.
Ren Baker was talking in his press conference the other day when it was his press conference about the coach situation, but it came up.
Right.
He was talking about something related to scheduling and the CFP and all this. And he was talking about how he said, if you look at the top 4 teams the top teams in the Big 12, he didn't say top 4. He just said the top teams. He said there is a direct correlation to their schedule.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
It's just some teams are getting the short end of the stick when it comes to scheduling. Now, I don't know how you fix it, right? Because it can't be completely even. There's no way to make it even.
Well, if you go to regional pods, not divisions, let's not talk about divisions. That's a bad word. But you go to pods, now all of a sudden you've got groups of schools that are clustered by region. And that's a very simple way you could solve some of those problems. If there's only 4 teams in a pod, you play 3 games and then you got the rest of the schedule to be filled out with other schools in the conference. So you'll still get those cross schedules. BYU and West Virginia will still play, but you've got those 4 in one pod that you can look back on and say, okay, this is really how we're going to deal with this group. We're going to deal with this group and this group.
Yep. I like it. Daniel Gigak's in the house. He says, hi, guys. Sorry I'm late. Daniel's actually a contributor over at the College Football Mafia.
He is, and he does a good job. I'm still working on speeding him up. He's got the West Virginia drawl that he likes to think before he talks. I'm still moving him on.
Yeah. I've got the West Virginia drawl, but I don't have the thinking before I speak part.
He's smarter than I
do the
am.
opposite. I do the opposite. I speak before I think and stick my foot in my mouth. But anyway,
I love it.
Daniel, thank you. Daniel's been a supporter of mine from maybe from the beginning. I don't know, for a long time. So Daniel, love you, my man. Thank you. And he's, as you can see, he's a VIP member here on the channel. So thank you, Daniel. And I do want to address Spitfire the Dragon. I don't think it's anything personal towards Boise State. I know he's a
Uh,
Boise State fan.
I'm a bit Boise State fan, big time.
Yeah, they're catching the strays or the unintended target maybe because of the committee's
Right.
poor decision making. You know what I mean? I mean, and no disrespect to Boise State, they're a great football team, and they could probably compete with the Big 12,
Oh, they would be
right?
great in the Big 12.
But
Yes.
they have not played a Big 12 schedule, and
Right.
I don't. And it's just it is what it is. And if you look at the Mountain West,
Yeah, San
that
Jose
conference is
State,
way down this year, man.
Fresno, I mean
They've
Nevada.
they've played a lot of losing teams.
Yeah, Colorado State was respectable this year, but it's really 3 teams in
Yeah.
a G6 league. But look, what he's saying is true. The everybody that's not in the P2 was being treated less
Yes.
than.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed. And I was going to say, and let me get your thoughts on this, Bomber. You know, the ACC and Big 12 fans have all kind of been going at each other's throat for the last couple of years, or last
Yes.
year or so. Anyway, I think we need to stop that, and I think ACC and even Group of Five fans. I think the Group of Five, the Big 12, and especially the Big 12 and the ACC fans need to kind of take up for each other and our programs, and because we're not, at the end of the day, we're kind of the ones being bullied by the P2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you agree? Or no?
In a vacuum, I think you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we're not living in a vacuum. Look,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for the Big 12 to be the strongest conference it possibly could, it would use private equity, get the top 4 brands out of the ACC, and call it good.
Yeah.
And until that Florida State Clemson thing is settled, it's going to be very difficult to rectify anything. Now, if they came out tomorrow and said, you know what, we're throwing our hands in the air, the ACC and the Big 12, we're going to combine for a super league of 32 teams. We'll do our own little subdivision of playoff to determine who goes to the big playoff. I would be immediately on board. If Brett Yormark set the sail, I would follow him. And immediately, instead of sort of dogging on Pitt fans who've been really bad to everybody in the Big 12, I'd reach out and I'd say, here we are. Now we're together. What can we do to attack them? And then I would throw a big meeting together with all the social media people that I've now got friends with in the ACC. And I would say, let's come together in a conference and figure out what we can do to marry our messages and to hammer this new thing against the P2.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd be the first to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I've got some contacts, ACC people as well that I like and respect, and yeah, at the end of the day, we're all fighting an uphill battle.
Absolutely.
The 2 big dogs.
Yep.
In the P2 in Big 10, and I know a lot of people don't like the term P2, but let's just be real. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, that's what it is.
It doesn't matter what you want to call them. They're other than we are. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Daniel, with this comment, he says, for pod scheduling to work effectively, you need 4 pods of 5 teams. That way you can have a 9-game conference schedule, 4 games in your pod, 5 in another pod.
He's right. That is the better one. And I did mention 5 teams. The problem you're going to run into, though, Daniel, and you know this because we've talked about it, is to do that, you have to have 20 in your conference. And those 20 right now, Brett Yormark wants to use private equity. It's already out there. We talked about it, but all during the offseason, he would love to steal those top brands, build a 20-team or maybe a few more, but at least 20-team conference and be done. So you're right. That is the ideal model. But until we get there, you have to use what you got.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you, Daniel, for the comment. I had another one here I wanted to read. Oh, Mo and Vision's in the house. What's up, Mo and Vision? He says
Sweet.
Big 12 needs to build big brands.
Yes.
Too much parity leads to cannibals.
That's absolutely true.
How do you build the brand in a conference of equals?
Yeah, well, you can't externally build anything, right? It has to come from the brands raising themselves up.
Right.
We saw this year Utah was historically down. Oklahoma State was historically down. If they were as good as they said they were, and say BYU and Utah met and the winner of that game only had 1 loss, how strong would the conference look? Utah would look great, or BYU, whoever lost that game, would say, "Hey, man, we only lost to our rival, our hated rival. We're undefeated everywhere else. Get those brands out the front door so people can see them." So, and we could argue who those brands would be. My brands would probably be different than everybody else watching. But at the end of the day, I think it's true. We do need, if we stay at 16, I think we need 5 or 6 that every year can win roughly 9 games. And I don't know if we're going to get there, because that's basically what the SEC and the Big Ten have, right? And that's the only way you could promote the conference from within, and that would take years. And I don't think that's what Brett Yormark wants. I think he wants sudden change.
Yeah. Rod Nix wants to know if you get there in 2025, the new league with the private equity.
Sorry, say that again.
Do you think the private equity, the new league, possible new league with private equity happens as soon as 2025?
No, I don't think that's pretty quick, because you have all the organization around it. And look, it's 2 years to bring in new schools. How much do you think it would take to build an entire new league? Right. So I think if that's going to happen, everybody needs to really just pay attention to the timing required. And it could be 6 years. It could be 2030, 31, 29, 30. So anywhere from 29 to 32, I could see a super league come in.
Yep. Moen Vision says Colorado is a looming giant. I was actually going to touch on that. I'm glad you brought it up, Moen Vision. Lock down Deion for a decade and let him cook. And I don't disagree, but that's you kind of made my point. If Deion decides he doesn't want to be there anymore, then that brand is gone.
Yes.
So they need to strike. To be perfectly honest with you, we needed Colorado to win the Big 12. If my team wasn't going to win it, or in your case, your team wasn't going to win it, I think we would have been better off as a league had Colorado played in the title game and won it, and done it with only a loss maybe on their schedule, not 3.
But
right?
Colorado right now is Deion. You already said it. Take Deion away, and now Colorado is middling, right? At least to start.
But you're still going to draw eyeballs to that game.
For the one game, but that's like lighting a match and letting it burn for 5 seconds.
That's why I kind of agree with Moen's point. If you can somehow keep Deion in the league,
sure,
and all of a sudden he becomes synonymous with Colorado, and the Buffalo brand itself grows.
Yes.
Outside of him,
yes,
then you've got something. But how long does that take?
I was just going to say that doesn't happen in 2 years.
Right.
He would have to be there. Moen says about 10 years. I don't think that's true. I still like the 5 to 6 years. If West Virginia comes back, if BYU returns, if Arizona State somehow can keep their roster together, you get 5 or 6 brands in the Big 12 that are West Virginia, I think, is a big one because it's the one East Coast brand that has national prominence. It's been around. UCF is growing, but if West Virginia was one of those 5 or 6 brands, I think the entire conference is raised up.
That's fair. I mean, I'm going to be biased there and say yes, but I don't want to be. I'm trying to take my gold and blue glasses off a minute.
Well, I said it. You didn't.
I know. So, I appreciate that. I honestly, the numbers kind of back that up. Honestly, if you look at the numbers, and I think BYU falls. This is off topic, but to me, when you think Big 12, here are the top brands: BYU, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. I think you could say Utah fairly now after what they've done the last decade.
Kansas State and Iowa State.
And I would add, I don't know that I'd include Iowa State. Not yet. I don't think
he's done it for what, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, but I don't think they're there yet. I mean, you got to realize how bad they were historically. It's all a matter. It's all a matter of opinion. Anyway,
right.
Yeah.
It is matter of opinion.
But if Colorado can keep doing what they're doing, then eventually maybe you can put them in that conversation.
Well, and TCU and Baylor, all these schools we're talking about, we go 9 deep. Could you imagine a conference where everybody in the conference was 8-4, 9-3 for 5 years? How good does that conference look? Right. Because to get to 8-3, 9-4, even 10-2 or 11-1, you're beating teams in other leagues. to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that would be fantastic for the conference.
Yeah. And I know Brett Yormark likes to tout the parity, but I think he does that because he has to be
Yeah,
to be
I'm
frank.
not. I originally liked parity. I thought it was great to be strong
It's
and
terrible.
deep. We need
Yeah.
brands right now.
Yeah, we do. We do.
need brands.
The eye patch says the Rudy Project is moving to make SEC Big Ten League.
Yeah, so the Rudy Project, the reason that's even called Rudy is because it was championed by Notre Dame. It's the first time they've
they
ever
didn't show
come
up for the
out for a
meeting.
thing. I don't know if they showed up for the meeting or not, but I do know this. The Big Ten especially is not going to show up to any Super League proposal that has Notre Dame leading the charge.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do 70 teams, and that's a lot of teams, but say you could do 70, or let's round up to 72 teams in one league, it would be fantastic. I would love that because all our brands in the Big 12 and the ACC, plus you could bring some more in. You could bring in a Boise State. You could bring in Memphis or Tulane. And that gives you room. That right there, more than half of all the Division I schools in one conference for a Super League, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Thunder OU Sooner thinks Arizona State is a looming giant, and that's tell you what, with Kenny, if Kenny Dillingham hangs in, I think he will because he's an alum. As long as somebody doesn't offer him a bag, but if he sticks around there with what he's doing, man, I think they could be on the precipice. They really
so
could
who
be.
said that? Who said that one?
Thunder OU Sooner.
Thunder OU Sooner. What you're saying there, Thunder, is what Arizona State people have been saying for 50 years, just so you know. Every next year, Arizona State's looming giant.
I hope. Where's Catch at? Is he on here?
I don't know, but you mean Chris?
Yeah.
He knows the joke. He's an Arizona State guy. Every year, at least in the Pac-10 where I grew up, in the Pac-10 area, every year Arizona State was the looming giant.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah. Chief Fan, I saw you ask this question earlier, so I'll go ahead and address it. I don't want to leave you hanging, man. He says, can Andy Kotelnicki win the Big 12 at West Virginia? I don't know, man.
Is he the coach?
No. He's not. He's been on pretty much any list you read in any article. He's on it.
Okay.
And it was reported a couple of days ago that he was going to interview for the job. So
gotcha. Okay.
I like him. I ain't gonna lie. I like him. I like the idea of bringing him in, but who knows, man? It's yet to be determined, I guess.
Yeah, you're giving up on Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say he's out of the running.
Nick Saban.
Yeah,
all these names I'm hearing for North Carolina job too.
I do think Rich Rod has an outside shot at it, but I don't think that's going to be Ren's. I think Ren's going to.
I liked Rich Rod.
Oh, I did too.
At West Virginia.
A lot of fans, about half the fan base.
He left you guys high and dry.
Yeah, about half the fan base still hates his guts.
So. Yes.
They're talking about I've heard saw a couple mentions about a Big 12 ACC merger. Bomber and I were actually talking about this off air before we started. It sounds great on the surface, but the problem you have with that is if you create one giant conference, then it makes it that much tougher for your individual teams to get into the CFP.
Yeah, the CFP would definitely need to be rejiggered if you combine two power conferences into one.
Yep.
I still think it's too many teams to manage, and there's a lot of complications there. You're as the Wild Ute says, you're bringing a lot of milkers in with that. You're bringing in schools that historically aren't football powers. They're basketball powers, the powers and other things, but football is not necessarily where they put their money. And Brett Yormark told all the Big 12 members this last offseason, he told them all, we're a football first conference. So he got the memo. He knows where the money comes from. And for the Big 12 and the ACC, frankly, to be successful, really to be successful, they'd have to get rid of some of these schools that simply can't keep up.
Yeah. Now, Stanley, this is what Stanley's talking about is not a merger, but it's a league, a super league with those two conferences in it.
Well, the best brands in both conferences.
Yes.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
And you just do your own thing and not even have to worry about what the SEC and Big Ten are doing at that point, right?
I'm not for doing their own playoff. I'm okay with the even quarterfinal playoffs within the league itself. I am totally okay with that. But I still think the minute you give up your ground at the CFP level, I don't think you'll ever get it back. So unless they want to be relegated for now to time in memoriam, you cannot walk away from the Big Ten and the SEC. At least in my opinion, I think that would be a massive mistake.
Yeah. Fair enough. What happens? Let's look at down the road 5 years. What if in 5 years, no Big 12 or ACC team has even sniffed a national championship? Would you change your opinion?
No, I would never give up that ground unless I was kicked out. I would make them, the cold dead hands, type thing. You have to pry it out of my cold dead hands.
Even knowing that BYU would likely have a better shot of winning a title.
Yeah, but it's a title in Division II.
No, it ain't. Who cares?
I do. I fought for BYU to be top level, and I don't want them to give up that ground.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting discussion because I've had West Virginia fans argue, hey, we might as well just relegate ourselves to a G5 and
right. They're frustrated. I get
Right.
it. That frustration is good, and I don't think you're wrong. There is no right or wrong here.
Mhm.
It just comes down to where would you like to see your school compete? In my opinion, if BYU tomorrow was invited to the SEC, and for 30 years they were an interminable 7-5, 8-4 team, I would still love it because of the competition. So that does not scare me at all. I do not want to be in a lower thing ever again if I can help it.
Makes sense. Daniel Gigax says parity in the SEC is good. In the Big 12, it's awful. It's just how ESPN perceives it. And that's exactly what Chris Kleiman said in one of his interviews not too long ago.
Right.
He said everybody beats everybody in the SEC. It's because it's a tough conference. When it happens in the Big 12, we stink.
Yeah. And something else, Steve High Florida, who I love talking to on Twitter. He's been on my show 1 or 2 times. Very, very smart guy.
Who's that?
Steve High Florida.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He's
in the chat?
He's in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
He says the ACC blows up, which is what Greg has been talking about on Peek Around the Corner. They dissolve the conference, and then they rebuild it with 10 or however many teams they want to bring back in. Maybe they try to steal some schools from the Big 12, for instance. That league by itself, I think, would not be much different than the Big 12 in value. So if you're looking to slough off schools that are dragging you down, that conference will be better, but it's not going to be like $60 million better than the Big 12. It might be $5 million, in my opinion. $5 million.
Yeah,
better.
I think if you've got Florida State and Clemson in there,
but that's it.
I think it changes the equation.
Okay.
Now,
I just don't.
Well, I don't want to say anything. I actually have a video planned on this, so I don't want to give away too much.
Without this is how I'll finish it. Without Notre Dame as a full-time member, I do not think the dissolution theory with the team sloughing off the Boston colleges and whoever else from that conference and reconstituting it. You have California, you have Stanford, you have SMU now. You do all that and you rebuild this conference into this smaller, tighter form. I think that's great. But the value proposition for the schools, I don't think it's going to make enough money worth it to go through the trouble of doing that when you can immediately self them off by joining a Big 12 who will write a check to you via private equity, say, we're going to buy your participation in our league for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
That's I think the better. If I was Florida State, that's what I would do. Because it's a short-term deal. You'll get more money immediately, cash infusion, and now in 5 or 6 years, you're free to join whatever league you want to.
Yeah. Moan Vision says the Big 12 should do whatever they need to do to keep Dion at CU because they're a ratings giant.
Say that?
Similar, but he thinks the Big 12 needs to step up and help. But,
in what way, Moen?
And that goes in, and I don't want to make this about West Virginia, but I don't know. It's my channel. I guess I can do what I want, right? But one of the reasons we want Rich Rod as our coach is he has the backing of Pat McAfee. Could you imagine a show, having West Virginia's head coach on the Pat McAfee show once a week?
Yeah.
Pat McAfee doing more shows in Morgantown. I mean,
right?
there could be so much. Not Pat McAfee can do. He may do stuff like that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with Rich Rod as our head coach, I think it would be even at another level,
I think that's great.
and it would
What I'm
bring it.
asking is,
It
what
would
can
bring
the
the
league
brand
do
back.
about it?
Right. I know, but I
That's
was
my
just explaining.
question.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point, and that's. I hope maybe let's see if Moen answers it down here anywhere.
That's one that he's mentioned, but we've never drilled down. If you're
Okay.
saying to keep Colorado in, and we'll talk about it tomorrow on our show, so I'll know then.
Okay.
But
All
if
right.
Moen is saying the Big 12 to keep Dion happy will supplement his salary so he stays at Colorado, I think that is an untenable idea, because you're in a league now where you have schools like Iowa State and West Virginia and Kansas State and Kansas that have been kicking dirt for decades. They're not going to want to give up that extra money just to keep one ratings monster in the Big 12, because appreciably, in my opinion, Dion's helping Colorado. He's not necessarily helping the Big 12.
I don't know that I agree with that, but I don't know
Okay,
that
that's fine.
I don't know that I also don't know. I don't really disagree with you on the other schools not helping. I
Yeah,
agree with you
I
on
find
that
it
part.
hard to believe that they would write him a check just so
I
he's
mean,
subsidized to stay there.
to be honest, I wasn't happy that the existing members took a pay cut to let you guys in.
Oh,
I
I
didn't like.
understand. I would
I
have
didn't
been
like.
pissed too.
I didn't think it was a good idea, and now we're going to suffer because of it. Because now we're going into revenue sharing and we're making.
But you're making more. You're $10 million more than you were. So BYU brought with
Yeah, but
itself a bonus to every one of the existing Big 12 schools.
the new
They're
TV deal don't.
making.
The new
They're
TV deal hasn't kicked in yet.
no, next year. Everything starts next year.
Yeah, but the revenue. Yeah, but they won't get paid for next year until the following year. So they're going to be
No,
1 year.
this is the last year. This is the
I,
last
I
year on
understand
the
that.
old plan.
I understand. Revenue
Okay.
sharing kicks in July 25.
I understand. Revenue sharing is the House settlement, though. That
Correct.
has nothing to do with whether BYU's in the Big 12. You're associating two things
Yeah, I'm trying to
that aren't
explain
the
it, but
same.
I'm having trouble getting on the same page.
Okay.
So we'll just leave it alone. The truth says, to be honest, how many power teams are there in the SEC Big Ten? Maybe truly 6 to 10. The rest are paid off to take beatings annually.
That's right.
It's hard to argue that, the truth.
And
thank you.
Minnesota's not going to walk around away from $75 million.
Exactly. The truth, by the way, the truth is chiming in on X. If you're watching on X, do me a favor, please. Once the show's over, come over to my YouTube channel, Couz's Corner. Come over, subscribe. You can check out all my past videos. You'll see all of the uploaded stuff I've done, the pre-recorded videos that I don't stream, that I don't live stream. You can check those out over on my YouTube channel. Thank you, the truth, for chiming in. Let's go ahead and we haven't even got to the Brett Yormark comment yet.
Yeah,
Let's
go ahead
and play. This is what Brett Yormark during the pre-Big 12 championship press conference. Brett Yormark made an opening statement, and this is coming from the CFTV YouTube channel, which covers the Cyclone Fanatic. This is their YouTube channel. See if I can enlarge this here.
Bearing off this Saturday, led by two great coaches. State and Arizona State programs have accomplished this season. I want to congratulate both Coach Dillingham, Coach Campbell. The leadership at these two institutions is first class. Before I turn things over to the coaches, I want to quickly touch on last night's rankings. As you know, I'm a pretty transparent guy, and I speak what's on my mind, and I'll look to do that right now.
I love that part.
The committee continues to show time and time again that they are paying attention to logos versus resumes. I've said that before. I want to say it again. And I say logos because they're concentrating on team logos and conference logos. Strength of schedule should matter. And wins against Power 4 opponents should matter. 74% of the Big 12 wins were against Power 4 opponents this season. Meanwhile, the group of five is 11-80. I want to say that again. 11-80 versus Power 4 teams this season. And in no way should a group of five champion be ranked above our champion. And I'm going to say that one more time. In no way should a group of five champion be ranked above our champion. ASU and ISU each played 10 games against the Big 12, SEC, and Big 10, winning both P4 non-conference games against the SEC and the Big 10, and winning 7 of 9 P4 conference games. Boise played 1 game against the Big 10 and lost, and that was their only P4 opponent. The committee clearly focuses on the wins and loss column. Going by that principle, no 3-loss team from a Power 4 conference should get a bye over a 2-loss champion from the Big 12. I'm going to say that again. No 3-loss team from a Power 4 conference should get a bye over a 2-loss champion from the Big 12. The format is playing out with the excitement we thought. Many of you have asked me, what do I think about the format and would I change anything? And I'll just restate what I.
All right. That's the main part. He did go on to say a little bit later that he wants to have a hard conversation with one of the leaders there for the CFP about the key, to get a clear understanding of what the key metrics are, because it was his understanding the strength of schedule was going to be one of the key metrics, and they don't appear to be using that rating that very heavily in these rankings. So, first off, kudos to our commissioner, Mr. Brett Yormark, for standing up for the conference. And I know he kind of went after the G5 there, but he's got a very fair point, and I think he had the data to back it up. But he did also talk about because they're kind of positioning Clemson to potentially get ahead of. And I think that's what he was referring to there. They've got Clemson ranked like 1 spot behind Arizona State, if I remember correctly, something like that.
Yes.
So where they could potentially jump ahead.
Yes.
If they beat beat SMU, they could potentially jump ahead of Arizona State or Iowa State in the rankings, even though they have 3 losses. And so, I mean, why is it not fair? Bomber, what were your initial thoughts when you heard those comments?
First of all, I was energized. I love Brett Yormark, and I love that he's fighting.
Yep.
He doesn't care if you're teasing him. He doesn't care if he's getting criticism from both the SEC, the Big 10, and the other the G6 conferences either. He doesn't care because he has one customer, and that's the Big 12. So immediately I was energized with his answer. He was fighting, which is all I've asked him to do from the very beginning. And 2, he presented a reason why. He didn't just walk up and complain like we saw from somebody at the ACC. It wasn't just a complaint. It was data. And he does everything based on data, and then he tells the world what that data is. That's the one thing that's missing from this current CFP format with the committee is we don't know what they're judging.
There's no transparency. No transparency whatsoever.
And no data to justify it.
The 365 guys were talking about that the other day on their show, man. They need to figure out a way, instead of just sending Ward Manuel up there to be a target for everybody.
Yeah.
Come up there with some data, man, and show us why you're doing what you're doing. Otherwise, it looks like you're showing favoritism, because every time how often have we sit through these, Bomber? And you see all of a sudden a 3-loss Big 10 or SEC team just miraculously appears in the top 25. And by the way, they just got through playing a team in their own conference that's now ranked around 12th or somewhere.
Yeah.
So that they can justify. So now they can say, "Oh, they beat a ranked team." Well, they wouldn't have been ranked if you hadn't have stuck them there ahead of teams that they shouldn't be ahead of.
I.e. Missouri.
Bingo.
Missouri is the best example of that.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
There is no way in the world. I'd even argue Illinois doesn't deserve to be where they are.
Yeah.
But to me, it's baffling.
They're promoting their own schools so that they can say they have another top 25 victory. They're doing that on purpose.
I know they're not ever going to say, man, I would love to be a fly on the wall, or I wish I knew Mac Rhodes.
Tell
personally.
him to hit his record button, would you?
Jiminy Christmas. I don't know how they can sit there, and I'm sure there are ACC representatives in there too. I don't know how they can sit there and see this fiasco. And to be honest with you, ACC's getting a little bit of favoritism too, if you want my honest opinion.
Of course they are. Yes.
But guess who they're partners with?
Exactly.
ESPN.
Yeah. Well, we're partners with them too. There's just a much lower share.
Exactly.
Right.
They're
So if
having
the
to share
SEC is getting all the attention, the ACC's right below them, and then we're down here. But we have Fox as well, and Fox is a great partner.
They are. Now, the argument would be, well, what about the Big Ten? Well, to be honest with you, the Big Ten's a pretty darn good conference this year, if you want my honest opinion. I haven't really had a whole lot of issues. I argued a couple weeks ago, I thought Penn State was ranked a little bit higher than they should have been. There's an argument that maybe Indiana hasn't played anybody, but man, they're 11-1.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue about Penn State, in my opinion. If wins and losses, and that's another one. They're ranked what, 9th, 8th, whatever it is. They haven't played anybody.
No.
BYU's strength of schedule is much harder than Indiana's.
Yes.
They got 2 losses, and where are they at? 18th.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I
think that's right.
It makes absolutely, with only one more loss, and they have a win over SMU, who's sitting there in the top 10 or top 12. So, it just, none of it makes sense to me at all.
Well, we all just need to keep in the back of our heads, it's an invitational. It's not an actual tournament, right? It's an invitational for a bunch of guys to go play pickup basketball behind their house. Yeah. That's essentially what they're doing.
Yep. Got a couple new channel members here. I've got Gavin Hingley. Yeah. Thank you for becoming a member, Gavin.
Good job, Gavin.
I've got Antoine Couz.
Antoine.
What's up, Antoine? Absolutely. Antoine, thank you. Thank you and Gavin both for joining the channel, becoming VIP members. Hopefully you take advantage of the early content I put out, and then obviously you'll get first dibs on comments in live streams. And I do random shout outs during videos as well to all the VIP members. And we have Gavin, it looks like you joined twice. Am I seeing this correctly?
I saw the same thing. I don't know
if that was a mistake, but it shows you joined twice, but you may want to check that, man. I mean, if you want to join twice, I'll take your money. But you may want to go back and make sure you didn't make a mistake there, man, because I don't want you to, pay more than you intended to. But I do appreciate the support. And but yeah, I bet the ACC wish their commissioner was more like Brett Yormark.
I think you're exactly right. And maybe there's no lawsuits if Brett Yormark's the current commissioner of the ACC. Look, at the end of the day, the ACC from a competitive standpoint, top to bottom, is weaker than the Big 12. According to the Sagarin ratings, the Big 12 is the second, right behind the SEC in competition level. So at the end of the day, the Big 12 is doing everything it can, beating the teams in front of them. Unfortunately, that's not enough. They need to do other things, bells and whistles. Yeah. I don't know what, maybe do week 0 games and week 15 games. I don't know. Do something that stands out so people see them.
Yeah. And this argument Brian Browning brings up, he says UNLV beat Kansas.
Yep.
Kansas took down the top 3 teams in the Big 12, and Boise State beat UNLV. WTF you think Boise State would do against the Big 12? And that's fair, okay? It's perfectly fair, but here's my counter argument, Brian. That's the only argument. That and a loss to Oregon is the only argument you can make. That's it. That's all you have is one opponent that you played. Or 2 if you count the Oregon game. You have 2 opponents you played that you have some kind of argument. And, okay, UNLV beat Kansas finished 5-7.
So transitive wins, those are so fun. Yeah, I mean, transitive wins don't work. Everybody knows
that's the word I was looking for.
I mean, it's fun to do. It's fun on Twitter. Come on a show and do these things out, but everybody knows that's ridiculous. Yeah. You can't, just because Boise beat UNLV and UNLV beat Kansas doesn't mean Boise would have matched up well against Kansas. We wouldn't know unless they played.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the Big 12 actually has head-to-head wins over SMU, right?
Yeah.
For an example.
Yeah, the only victory against SMU.
So and that's just one example. There are others, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But that's the one that every week bugs the crap out of me. Because the ACC schedule is not tough at all if you look at it.
No, they only have 8 conference games. So they have the Mercers of the world.
SMU has not played hardly anybody.
No, they missed both Clemson and Miami.
And they've made it clear with Miami and to a degree with Boise State look, Ashton Genty is an absolute dog. First off, that young man is phenomenal. But they've made it clear that they take individual players into consideration, which I think is an absolute travesty when judging a team sporting event and deciding who plays for a championship. You're going to take the play of one player and decide that team is good based on one player they have on a team with 22 other guys. It just make sense.
I think Boise being in the playoff is a foregone conclusion. They should get in. If UNLV beat them, they're out. So how strong is that case? If he was that good with one loss, why, if they only had one more loss, wouldn't they drop out of the top 12? The reason they won't is because they need Alabama in there. They need Ole Miss in there. They have to bring in UNLV because they were a conference winner. So don't lose. If SMU loses, they're out. Alabama's in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it looks right now.
Yeah. And then you want to talk about good players. Let's talk about good players. Arizona State sitting there with Cam Scatterboo, who, in my opinion, is the most underrated player maybe in the country.
He's very good.
They never give Arizona State credit for having him on their team. You know what I mean? It just they were giving Texas credit for having Quinn Ewers the other day on the teleconference. They talk when it come to Miami. Well, they've got really good quarterback playing with Cam Ward. Okay, whoop-de-doo. They should have lost to Virginia Tech. They should have lost to Cal. Now they've dropped 2 games that they shouldn't have dropped, and they're still sitting there real close. They were 12th, weren't they? If I'm not mistaken.
Who?
Miami.
No, they're 13.
Okay, 13th, but they're right on the precipice.
They are.
They're not going to get in, I don't think.
They're not gonna.
And let's talk about that for a minute. That brings up a whole nother point. How in the world can you justify punishing a team for playing in their conference title game, but you won't move a team down for not playing at all?
Well, you should. That's what's going to happen. Miami's going to fall because they don't have a championship game. Whoever wins, SMU will probably fall to 13.
Didn't he say? I thought he said they would not move spots.
No, he said maybe. He said no. I think the word was potentially. Potentially would move.
Yeah.
So right now, Alabama's in. SMU has to win to stay in at 1 loss, which is crazy. And if Clemson beats them, right now the calculation is SMU drops out. Now, because of all this public outcry, could SMU stay in and they drop an SEC team? That, of course, could happen. Until the picks are done, we don't know. But more than likely, Miami and SMU are out, and you only get one ACC team in.
Yeah. Brian Browning says Scatterboo is great running back. Nobody should doubt that, but he's not. And I agree. I don't disagree with that, Brian, but that's not my point. Is you shouldn't decide who plays for a championship based on same thing last year when Florida State got hosed.
Yes. Because
their quarterback was injured. You shouldn't base it on one player. It's what the team did. Look at the team's data, the strength of schedule, strength of record. And I'm so tired of hearing about the eye test, I could puke.
Oh, my gosh. Don't get me started.
There is no way everybody on that committee watches every single game.
Yes.
There's no way. So
they don't even try, actually, I don't think.
I mean, how do they have time to, Bomber? These are professionals who are ADs and presidents, and there's no way they can sit and watch every game.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up because, in my opinion, there should be no active administrators from any schools.
Agreed.
It's a conflict of interest. Even to have graduates, it's a conflict of interest. But to say Ward Manuel can be neutral as a sitting AD at Michigan is one of the stupidest arguments I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it just, even if they don't intend to be, there's human nature built into this.
It's bias. It's implicit. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I get fired up talking about this, man. It's just a sham, absolute sham. This, in all honesty, it's worse than when they only had 4 teams, in my opinion.
And we've done this a couple times on this show, disagree. I actually think 12 teams is great. I think it would be better if it was 16 and you have no buys.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, we need to go to a 4-4-2-2-1-3.
I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
And you get 16 teams in, 3 at large, and the ACC and the Big 12 both get 2.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you have to there are other arguments, but it's not near what it is now.
Yeah. Now that I agree with you on. We agree on that point, Bomber, because, and I think when I love Brett Yormark, but that's one thing he did that I disagree with. When he was offered that, he should have taken it.
Yes.
In my opinion. And I'd say looking back on it now, he may feel that way, but
you know what though? I don't know if that was like a trial balloon. It
maybe.
Wasn't ever an official offer. We just heard that might be something that they were looking at. If we were to go back and look at all of our reporting from that week, and as I looked back on it myself, I think it was a floated idea to see how people would react to it. And it wasn't just you and me and Brett Yormark saying, you're screwing the Big 12, you're screwing the ACC with only 2. Now we know what we know. That didn't even really get put into a formal proposal. So you can still come back to it and say it's a brand new idea.
Yeah, true. And I could always, with 2026, still, they don't have the format ready, I don't think, for 26. Only thing they've decided on is the pay structure.
Yeah. And even that can be changed, right? They can go into every offseason and redo it. I asked Bob Thompson that question, and he told me that any contract can be renegotiated. So there's nothing to say something doesn't change next year. But if I had to guess, no changes next year, and it's the year after.
Yep. Steve Ohio, Florida says Boise State getting a bye in the CFP if they win a Mountain West is the most absurd thing in the entire bracket.
Yeah. Everybody agrees with you there.
That everybody that's not a boy. And
Boise
I hate
State
it.
or UNLV.
And I hate it because I do have a ton of respect for Boise State. I do. Yes. And I actually would love to have them in the Big 12, to be honest with you.
Yep.
And I think they could compete in the Big 12.
I do too.
But when you look at the schedule they've played, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's just facts.
Look, do a stare and compare. I think it's 86th in the country, their strength of schedule. Our lowest was Iowa State, and it was something like 61st. BYU's is like some ridiculous low number. So the strength of schedule thing is a thing that Brett Yormark would want to use, but it certainly doesn't help a Tulane or a Boise State or any of the G6s.
Right. But see, that's the thing. Back to our point earlier that we made on the show, that they changed the criteria.
Yes.
They don't want to say strength of schedule because they want Ashton Genty to get a bye because he's such a good player and it brings eyeballs to the game.
I agree. Everything you're saying, I agree.
We Ray Charles can see it, what you're trying to do here. It's ridiculous.
That's good. I like that.
It's one of my favorites, actually. I use it a lot during when my daughters used to play basketball and the referee missed a call. I used to be one of my go-tos. Antoine Couz says, I'm against 4-4-2-2 because the Big 12 and ACC probably deserve 3 bids each this year based on strength of schedule.
Yeah, that in a perfect world, that's true, Antoine. Yeah. Right? You go to 24, now it's a real bracket, like it's a mini basketball bracket, and you could bring in more teams. But the thing is these players can only play so many games in a year. So you can't go, that's a third layer of games. And when you have a third layer of games, now you're adding another week. And they're already doing an extra 3 weeks. So I think you'd cut into the regular season. I can't believe they're going to go to more than 12 regular season games.
Yeah.
I would be stunned if that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think we just live in a world you got to take what you can get sometimes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the Big Ten and the SEC have all the leverage right now because of the brands that they've consolidated and the fact that they've won most of the national titles with the exception of 2 in the last decade, 2 decades. I don't know how long it goes. A long time. So unfortunately, they have that argument, and there's not a lot you can do about it other than win. The only thing that the Big 12 and ACC can do, the best thing they can do is win games.
Yep.
Get in the college football playoff and win some games. If Arizona State ends up being the 12 seed or Iowa State, and they can go to the horseshoe and beat Ohio State, there's your respect. Now, you can't turn around the next week and get beat 65-3 because if you do, everybody will forget about.
That's right.
It's like TCU never even played Michigan.
Yeah, it's a joke, isn't
it?
Anyway, I think the Winning cures all ills.
Yep.
Right. And the Big 12 needs to do a better job with its matchups, especially near the end of the season. So the teams going into the playoff or the end of the regular season, they're flying high. And the best way to do that is either do some sort of semifinal or something round to draw more attention for your best brands, not brands, but best teams that year at the very top to draw attention, or drop a conference game. You can do those both, by the way, with the final idea. But the 9th game, make that a FCS.
Yeah.
And not an auto win. Appalachian State beat the hell out of a lot of teams, but you do a good job to secure that.
Yeah. Brian says if Boise State turned down an invitation to the Power Four, they would be stupid.
Yeah, I don't think they would ever do that.
They're not going to do that.
No.
They'd be turning down millions of dollars in revenue for their school.
Yeah, no, that won't be happening. If Boise State gets an invite, they're going.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yep. Michael says that I'm right. You have to win one playoff game and not get destroyed in any other playoff game, losing it over. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Big 12 is never going to get the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
They have to compete. They have to win games. They have to not get blown out in games. They just have to. Their back's against the wall. They're looked at as an inferior product.
Yep.
Regardless of what we think. So they have to do more to prove themselves than everybody else. But Bomber, man, I don't really have anything else to say. Do you?
No, if that's what you needed me for. I appreciate you inviting me on and doing the thought experiment. I always learn stuff, right?
So
just talking right here, I came in with the one idea about what that 9th game could be, and now I'm leaving with a different idea of what that 9th game could be. And I think that would be anything we can do, and the people in the chat, anything you could do to support Big 12 creators, and there's a bunch of us, then we'll go out and we'll spread the message, do the proselytizing for the Big 12, and do what we can to try to, steer the Titanic. It might not ever work, but it's worth the effort.
Yep. Agreed. Before we get out of here, obviously I've got your stuff scrolling on the screen.
Sure.
But just go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, your work, and what you guys have going on over there at the College Football Mafia.
Absolutely. So College Football Mafia, my team, we cover every conference back and forth, and we talk college football. That's what we do. We have a Big 12 show. We have a Big 10 show. Who are the other conferences? We have shows, and we try to cover as much college football as we can. College Football Mafia on YouTube. And then tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be posting it on my Twitter. We have a big Freaking Friday show. It's a lot of fun, and we preview the games going into this weekend.
Antoine Couz says, I think the Big 12 has to win title to be taken seriously.
That would help a lot.
Yep. So, everybody go check out Bomber and his team over at the College Football Mafia. They do great stuff over there. I'm proud to say they're friends of the show here.
Sure.
I like those guys, respect those guys and what they do and what they stand for. So go check out their work. They have great guests on. Bob Thompson, to name one, the former Fox executive. Really good stuff over there. You'll see Daniel Gigax's pretty mug over there on occasion. And hear his West Virginia drawl.
Yeah, we always have people on representing different places and teams.
That's right.
Yeah, we're not just the core of that show is a Utah Ute and a BYU Cougar. So you can going in, you're gonna have conflict, and that's what makes it fun.
And you throw in a Mountaineer, you throw in a Ohio State Buckeye, and you throw in a Miami Hurricane occasionally,
and Washington,
and two Washington Huskies.
Yeah, and we're always looking for more. So
diverse group.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and Couz, obviously, I just want to say he's like a partner to our show, and really appreciate everything he does. If you're not already ready, consider becoming a member of his Couz Corner and all the stuff they do. And I guarantee you, whatever the membership fee is, you will get your value back every month.
I appreciate that, Bomber. It means a lot.
Of course, you bet.
I do want to plug. I do have another show, another channel that I do. If anybody who's interested in West Virginia basketball, I cover that over on Hoops from the Hills. That's a channel I've taken over as well that I used to be a part of when it started. I got out of it. Now I'm back in. And it's, I'm there, the Lone Ranger. I do have guests on, but I mean, I don't have a partner anymore. So it's just me, but come check me out over there if you have any desire to talk about West Virginia hoops. And
Absolutely.
It should be an exciting year. So we're excited about it.
Yes, sir.
Daniel says it's the Boone County pronunciations. I love it, Daniel. Man, I still got to try those pepperoni rolls you keep bragging about on X, man. I got to find those babies.
I'd be cautious. I'm not sure you can trust him very much. We'll have to see. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.
You, Thanks again, brother. Everybody, thank you all for joining the chat. Have a great night. And Q Country Roads.
Peace out.